You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt Migaki, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
I did it. I survived. This is officially the first post-NAMM 2019 episode. Sorry it's just a little bit late, but, recovering from NAMM and travel and all that stuff. But all that to say, thanks to everybody who showed up. There were so many of you at the pizza party, it was insane. I don't know exactly how many, but there was a lot. Maybe 60, 70 people, something like that. It was pretty insane. So thank you to everyone who showed up and hung out, and a big thank you to all of the folks who chipped in for the giveaway, including B.A. Ferguson Guitars, Gun Street Wiring Shop, Creation Music Company, Fox Pedal, Boss, Solid Gold Effects. It was awesome. It was so fun. We had such a good time, and I hope to do it again next year. In other stuff, this episode is brought to you by Sinusoid, the wonderful folks over at Sinusoid. Have we talked about the slivers? I know we have, but it's been a little bit. The smallest soldered patch cables on the market. You don't really like the idea of solderless. Maybe the idea is a little sketchy to you, but you do like how compact it is. Well, the sliver is the answer to your problems. Sinusoid Sliver is a soldered patch cable that is tiny, 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 so you can squeeze the maximum amount of pedals onto that board of yours, and we all know that's the most important thing that we can be doing. So make sure you check out sinusoid.com and check out the slivers. They're one of my personal favorite products that those guys make, and they make a lot of good products, so make sure you slide over there and check them out today. We're also brought to you by the wonderful Gun Street Wiring Shop. I know we mentioned them a little bit ago. They chipped in a $100 gift card for the giveaway at the pizza party, which is just amazing. And got to hang out with Sean quite a bit at NAMM. It was a lot of fun. But you want to know about the products, don't you? Custom wiring harnesses. Anything you can dream of. If you can dream it, there's a good chance they can do it. Push-pull pots, different switches, phase inversion, all kinds of stuff. We were kicking around different ideas the whole show, and it seems like Sean is open to just about anything. So if you check out gunstreetwiringshop.com, don't just limit yourself to the kits you see on hand. Make sure you use that contact form, and you'll get exactly what you need, exactly the way you need it. gunstreetwiringshop.com. All right, this next guest, for many of you, needs absolutely no introduction, but maybe a few of you have never heard him. Ariel Posen is a guitar player and singer-songwriter and just general gearhead and great guy. A lot of people know him from playing with the Brothers Landreth, but he is now currently promoting and getting ready to tour on his new solo record. So we talk about that a little bit. We get into the gear, of course, because that's what we do on this show. And I'll stop blabbing. Here's Ariel Posen. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the ToneMob.com podcast, show about guitar tone and the people behind it. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have Ariel Posen. What is happening?
How's it going, man?
It's going really good. I'm very excited to get to do this. Like, you and I have chatted on the interwebs on and off for a couple of years, and so it's nice to be able to sit down and actually have a chat.
This is like the 2019 version of getting together in person. Rather than chatting on an online platform, now we're just chatting essentially over the phone. I mean, like, it's 2019. I'd say we pat ourselves on the back. It's pretty good.
Yeah, no kidding. And what's nice about the glory of the internet is it's made international calling a non-issue. That is very handy.
Yeah.
Woohoo! Go internet.
Go internet.
But yeah, I'm really excited to do this. It's I've seen, your setup and your rigs and stuff, and it's so much different than anything that I do. I'm really excited to get into all that. But
Absolutely.
I think a good place to start though would be kind of the classic place I like to start with is what made Lil Ariel want to grow up and pick up a guitar that is strung with steel bridge cables.
Well, specifically the heavy
Going
gauges,
way, well,
or
no,
just
let's
like
go way
right from
back.
the
I
beginning,
was
because I didn't
right from the
always play
beginning.
heavier strings. Okay.
Oh, you
Yeah.
didn't. So there we go.
Yeah. Well, I grew up. Both my parents are musicians and are in a band, and I grew up traveling with them, just accompanying them, and then, by the time I was old enough to recognize music and sing along to songs and pretend like I knew what I was doing, I was already playing piano, and then immediately switched to guitar when I was about 7 or 8. I was a mid '90s kid. I mean, I was born in the '80s, but when I was really getting into guitar, the Beatles anthology had just come out, and it was like Green Day, Offspring, Rage Against the Machine type of music that was really popular at that time. And that's what made me want to play guitar. It was just bands and songs. It wasn't Guitar Hero type of people, and that just never looked back.
That's interesting. I never really thought about it that way, but that is very similar to me. I didn't start playing because I seen somebody rip a sick solo. It was because I liked the bands and songs that were playing guitar.
Yeah, and I got into Guitar Hero type people later on, but that's not what got me started. And everyone in my class was playing guitar, so it was half I needed to play an instrument because it just felt right, and half everybody else was doing it. So I was like, well, that's probably what I should do. And then they all stopped playing after a month or so, and I was the only one that kept going with it.
Do you remember what kind of guitar that was?
My first guitar, it's still at my parents' house. It's just this crappy acoustic. I don't even know the name. It's this parlor-sized thing that didn't last long in terms of me playing it. I convinced my dad. Basically, what happened was I was just so sick of it, and the typical kid starting guitars, like, when can I play electric? And we went to Long and McQuaid, which is the Canadian version of Guitar Center, and we rented an Ibanez RX series, which is not full shredder. It was very close to like a standard Strat. Had a humbucker in the bridge, and he said, "We'll rent this for a month." We rented like a tiny little practice Fender amp or Trainer amp or something like that, and had it for a month. Said, "Can I have one more month?" Okay. Another month. How about one more month? Okay. Sooner or later, we just like didn't give it back. We just basically paid it off rather than giving it back. And that was the first electric,
The
surprisingly.
first electric.
Yeah, and
The first electric seems to be a turning point for a lot of people. A lot of people
yeah,
start on acoustic, and then it's like, and then I got my first electric, and then everything just changed.
yeah. If like where I'm at now, guitar is guitar, and you're just playing the same thing anyways. But I understand where younger people's heads are at, because mine was at the same place. You see people on TV or on the records you listen to getting a certain sound and looking a certain way with the guitar. It's like, that's what I want to do. You just have this idea that acoustic guitar isn't as cool, but it is. It totally is. Um, it's just funny how we think when we're younger. Um, but for every young guitar player I know, it's that moment when you finally get that electric. You kind of got a bit more swag on your step, and you're just like, come on, yeah, I'm there, you know?
Wait a minute. Hold on. You're telling me that an acoustic guitar is just as cool as an electric guitar? I don't even know what's going on right now.
I think so. I mean, I look at it, guitar is guitar, and I don't want to get all philosophical, but like, it's the music that is what draws me in now.
No.
So, I mean, I can do the same thing. Well, to a degree, I can't do all the same things, but 85% of the way I'm doing the same thing, whether it's an acoustic guitar or an electric guitar. As I've matured, I look at it a bit differently, but obviously an electric is a lot more fun. Electric has a lot more variety in the sounds you can get, and helps you play differently. And it is definitely more versatile. Like, that's no question. But the acoustic guitar gets slept on quite a bit, I think, by people. And I think it's just something. If you're like a rhythm guitar player in a band and you just strum on it, there's not much for you to do, and it's not really respected. But I think it's so underrated, and people need to show it more love.
Yeah, I was really just kind of being a turd.
Yeah,
It's a little,
I thought I
it's
smelled
a little.
something.
That's right. Well, that's another story. We won't get into that on the podcast. But
This phone call's really advanced.
I know this technology we're using is quite insane. Thanks, Elon. Um, but no, I it's kind of a reoccurring joke. Sometimes it's not that funny of a joke, but I am hopelessly addicted to the electric guitar, and
Oh yeah.
I my wife would really like me to buy an acoustic, and most of the music that I listen to on a regular basis is like a little bit more acoustic Americana driven. I mean, I listen to some
Dude.
very heavy stuff too, but
Yeah.
for some reason I just like I when I like am looking at another guitar, it's almost always an electric. There's a few acoustics that I would really like to get, but I keep
Yeah.
getting drawn in by the wonders of fuzz pedals and electric guitars for some
Oh
reason.
yeah, man. I'm with you. That is not crazy by any means. It just there's uh there's just something majestic about electric guitars and everything that goes along with it. Acoustic is just so much more bare bones, and there is a lot of beauty in all the different kinds of styles of acoustic, the wood, and all that stuff. But with electrics and like the actual electronics and this and that, it's just so much deeper. I'm with you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I when I see somebody though that can do amazing things on an acoustic guitar, it does make me go, I really need to up my game here.
Like, if you listen
Uh,
to some like bluegrass players who just have that flat picking technique down, and they make these guitars, specifically like these dreadnoughts, sound like cannons. And there is so much tone and rhythm and body coming out of these things. It's pretty amazing. It's like there's a whole other world of um, getting your sounds acoustically and organically rather than through an amp, which should be focused on and appreciated just as much as what tubes are you using or what speaker is that. You can get so many different sounds just from an acoustic instrument too, with just a microphone in front of it. It's pretty special. Just saying.
I yeah, I would agree with that. There is a whole world inside those boxes, and I think that's the acoustic guitar is obviously where that started, where guitar music started from. There wouldn't be an electric without an acoustic, but I feel like people thought, like what more could we do with this acoustic? There's just so
Yes.
many sounds, and that's on like I don't know if I'm phrasing this the way I mean it. It's just like we've maxed it out. You got guys like Robert Johnson and all these old, blues guitarists using the instrument in ways that it was kind of never really intended to be used. And it's like, what else can we do with it? Type
Right.
of thinking.
Yeah. There you go.
I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that line of thought. Sometimes I never know where I'm going with the line of
I
thought.
think we're agreeing that acoustic guitar is great. Bottom line.
Is that what we're
As well.
doing? Is that what
I think so.
that's what we're doing?
I think we just agreed.
Well, we'll just continue to do so. So let's. So you kind of we kind of went off on a tangent about the glories of acoustic versus electric, but where we left off was with your parents purchasing that Ibanez for you, and then
Yes.
what was the next step?
The next step was actually, it's interesting. We're talking about heavy strings and whatnot. That still didn't. That came a lot later. But I was into a lot of music. I was into everything from the Beatles to Korn to Eric Clapton to Hendrix to John Mayer to the Foo Fighters. Like a little bit of everything. And there was a lot of times where I'd try to learn to play certain things, and I'd always just be in standard tuning, and I didn't realize that bands would tune down and do all these alternate tunings and 7-string guitars and all these things. I just like, it blew my mind. It was something I had no idea about. And then there was years and years later, I got into this guy named Kevin Bright, who's my favorite guitar player of all time. He's a Canadian dude as well, and he's like my slide guru. He doesn't just play slide; he actually plays every type of strung instrument. But his slide playing just would move me in certain ways that I've never heard in any other way. And he would always play these things in like drop D flat, open C, like open D flat, open C. And I'd always try to figure it out. And I was like, it never sounds good. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how you do this, especially with the slide. I'd always be fretting out. And then, yeah, just years later, it dawned on me to just match your gauge with the tension of the guitar. So like I for standard tuning, I don't play under 11s ever. I like 11 to 54. Some guitars I like 12s. And it's not for any reason of string Olympics or strength Olympics on guitar. I like how it sounds. I play really hard, so if I play on strings that are too light, I kind of play out of tune sometimes, or I'll pull a guitar out of tune really easily. And there's just more resonance in heavier strings. So if I just base it around, if I use 11s or 12s for standard tuning, then if I want to do like open D, I'm going to go down, a couple. So for open D, let's say I'll do 14s or 15s around there. And then for open C, I'll go between 17 and 19. And most people are like, that's crazy. But it's not as crazy as it sounds because you're just matching the tension. You feel me?
Right. That makes I totally get it.
Yeah.
And I, as a guy who plays 11s and 12s in standard a lot, I totally understand that. I don't play. Well, I do have a baritone, and I forget exactly what gauges are on that. It's pretty heavy as well. It's not quite that heavy, but it's pretty intense. But it makes a lot of sense. It's not, playing 11s is not that difficult. Like, it's very common for somebody to play 11s in standard tuning. I understand some people like lighter strings, but it's not that tough. Like I was able to I was able to start playing, 11s as a teenager, and I hope I'm stronger now than I was when I was a teenager. It wasn't that challenging. And I feel like going up to what you're talking about and dropping the tuning, it actually just makes sense from a playing standpoint because you want to maintain the tension that you're used to.
And it just comes down to like physics. Specifically, if you're playing with a slide, like certain strings, you're putting whether it's glass or brass or ceramic or nickel, doesn't matter. It just can't hold the weight of a slide. You need to up the gauge a bit, and obviously raising your action just a touch helps. But yeah, it's just what works for me. That's all I can say is I've spent a lot of time with it, and that's really what works for me. And it might be different for other people. It shouldn't be about doing something because you see someone else do it. Everyone's hands are different. Everyone's mentality when playing is different. It's all about just finding out what works for you. And I just go back to when I heard these low corn tunings, or like a lot of this Kevin Bright stuff that was low tuned, and I could just never figure out, how does that sound so amazing and you're not buzzing out and fretting out? And yeah, it just makes sense.
It does just make sense. You just put a bow on it right there. Ariel Posen plays heavy gauges because it makes sense. That's why.
There you go.
But you touched on something in there that actually is a decent segue into some stuff here. Some questions I had from the Facebook group that I normally don't get into a little later, but since you already briefly mentioned it, we should touch on this a little bit. Blake Lawson asks, what dictates your choice of slide material and shape?
Well, I've played all types of slides since I've started playing slide, which is about, I don't know, maybe the last 12, 13 years, maybe the last 10, 11, 12 years being a lot more serious about it. I guess that's most of the years, actually, what I just said. My math is bad this morning. Sorry. Um, I would play. First of all, the most important thing is finding a slide that fits your finger. Most importantly, because most people grab a slide that is way too big, and you just grab the first one you see at a store, and you go, "Cool, okay," and you start playing it, and it doesn't sound good, and it's really difficult to play. But in your head, you just go, "I guess I'm just not great at this. Maybe this isn't for me," and then you put it away, and you never play it again. I get so many people um, who come for lessons or just chat about slide or guitar or whatever, and that's one of the things they always say, and I always end up talking about this, and they're like, I never thought about that. And it's like, it's so strange, but it's got to be a bit of a journey to find the right one. So finding one that fit took a while, because I would play a type of slide that was too big on me for so long, and I would get used to it and start to make it work, but it never quite felt right. And then when I went smaller, just everything came together so much faster. And then in regards to the style, like I said, I love the sound of a brass slide because it's just got a bit more grit to it, a bit more top end, and my tone typically is a bit darker, so it just balances it out nicely. And my friend Danny Songhurst, who does the rock slide, I've been a long time user of his stuff, and I really love how it feels, the shape. Just had a relationship with him for a long time, and it came about that we did a signature model, which I've been using for the past 4 years. And it's a brass slide, which is fairly small. Like, it fits your pinky. Depending how big or small your fingers are, it might fit your ring finger if you have small hands. And it's got like a dome top. And it doesn't really help your playing necessarily. It just makes everything less harsh. If you're sliding away on the A string and your E string is getting a bit of the slide too, rather than it making a really gross scratching noise, it's just going to be a nice smooth sliding noise. And I just tried it one day when I was at his house on tour, and I loved it. And when the idea came up to do a signature slide, he suggested that one, and I was right there with him. I said, I did really like that. Can we just maybe change the measurements a bit on the length? And we did a little bit of adjustment there, but that's all I've been using for the last few years.
Cool. Your description of most people's slide experience was extremely on the nose for me. I was like, well,
Yeah.
I guess I'm just not very good at slide. And then I accidentally dropped it and it broke, and that was the end of my sliding experience, basically.
Slide is so much like, you need to kind of make the guitar work for you in a way, because it's so demanding. You got to get a slide that fits your finger. You got to make sure your actions maybe a touch higher. You get the slightly heavier strings. It just makes it easier. And most people don't ever think of that, because they just think they're supposed to struggle, or it's supposed to be playable just the same way as you would without a slide. But those little things, and not everyone has the luxury to just take a guitar and devote it to, more of a slide thing. And that's fine too. Most of my guitars, I have them set to a place where I can play comfortably with the slide, or I can play without it just as comfortably. And I don't know measurements or anything like that, but I just know a spot where it feels. And my tech, whenever he works on my stuff, he just knows now it's probably 98% where you want it. I'll give it a play, and I'll go, maybe just a touch higher than that, and then we nail it down. But it's important, make it work for you.
That's really interesting, because you see a lot of people that they'll get like an old, beater K or something with like a bowed neck, and it's just a crazy high action. They're like, it's okay, I'll just use this for a slide guitar. But you try to have them slide, for lack of a better term, into both camps.
Yeah. Like, wait, say that again? I'm confused.
Well, I mean, I was literally going to ask you, my next question, which you kind of already answered, was going to be, how you set a guitar up for slide, because most
Oh,
people
I
will
see.
go with something kind of on the extreme end of things. So they'll go with a guitar that has a crazy high action and
Ah,
one that maybe can't even be set up for normal playing, and that will be their slide guitar. You don't
gotcha.
tend to like that.
Uh-huh. Right. Yeah, there can be a balance. There can totally be a balance. It just takes a bit of noodling around with it to find it. Um, and it just came for me. It just came from years of figuring out what I like, figuring out that how come I always play differently on these guitars, and then on these guitars that play a bit, for the lack of a better term, worse, and give you a bit more of a fight. I tend to play better on those. I think that's what I like. And I just realized, I like the strings a bit higher up off the fretboard. I like the 11s, for standard tuning. It's funny, like when I go to NAMM, last year I brought my own guitars with me for sure, but like every other year, I usually just don't bring anything. And, every guitar that's there is set up with 10s or 9s that are like kissing the fretboard. And I go around doing demos or jams with a bunch of my friends, and it's very cool. People like will come crowd around, and it's super flattering and whatnot. But I can't play any of these guitars, and it's a real struggle. Um, it's funny. Like it's not actually a problem, but it's a good sign also to know what you like and how you need a guitar to be, and it just paints a clearer picture for you as a guitar player to know what you need to get to a level that you want to be at with your playing, because it needs to be set up exactly how you need it to be, and everyone has different preferences. It's good.
That's very interesting. Because you kind of described like what most people are looking for with a guitar, like really low action, medium gauge strings, and
Yeah.
it makes sense why every guitar at NAMM would be set up that way. But I never really thought about somebody who's used to a very different type of feel, kind
Hmm.
of struggling with what is quote unquote standard.
Yeah.
Do you have any other kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, weird preferences that you have with gear?
Let me think here. Well, the string gauge and the height is a big thing, of course. Um, that's basically the most. If a guitar is set up like that, that's really all that matters. I need to have reverb when I play. If I don't have reverb, I play just very strange and differently. I something about how it feels when I play is very important. And playing an amp, and this is more so in a band kind of environment, I cannot, unless I'm on in-ears or something, but I can't play an amp that's too low wattage in a band. If I start topping out with my sound, like when you just start breaking up immediately,
Yeah.
I start struggling as a player, and I start to overplay because I'm just trying to compensate for the fact that I can't hear myself. I need an amp with headroom. So much of my playing is a loud amp and an amp with headroom, and 90% of the, or what am I saying? 90%, 100% of the time, my guitar sits at about 6 or 7 on the volume, and the guitar is kind of like the master volume. So if I went to 10 on the guitar, my sound would be, even with like a 100-watt 2-rock or something, I'll typically always have an overdrive on at all times. It'll be pretty rockin' at 10. So I can get a clean sound at 6 or 7, and I just use that as a master. And I just find there's a lot more dynamics in my sound. I can get a lot more different tones that way, rather than always being at 10 on the guitar and, you know, tiptoeing on pedals all the time, or even amp channels to get different sounds. And I've been there. I've tried all the different things. I've done all the different methods endlessly. That's just another thing that I have found works for me, and that's a big part of what I do.
I'm a big fan of writing the volume knob myself. If I have an overdrive that like that's going to be a big dictating factor for me on whether I'm enjoying a particular overdrive pedal, is how well it responds to dynamics and the volume knob.
Oh yeah.
Um, in that, and for me, the one of the like the standard ones that I can't seem to get away from every time I plug it in. I just love it. Would be the Mad Professor Sweet Honey Overdrive. It's like one
Mm,
of my favorite three knob standard kind of like that. I can always make that sound decent.
cool.
What's one of your go to dirt boxes?
Oh, geez. Well, oh man, it's so tough in this day and age. There is so much stuff. I'm a type of player who has his favorites, but I also like to switch it up after a while. I just kind of get bored, or I just want to. I start chasing a different sound in my head. Um, I do have some faves though. So these would be dirt boxes that I don't usually hit with another pedal. These are like the always on for me, but it'll never be
Okay.
stacked. It'll be one of these. So the Duelist by Jesse Davey is amazing, and that like I use that a lot on my new record, and I use it live a lot. It's kind of like a blues breaker and a tube screamer dual overdrive thing. I've had a King of Tone for a few years that I love, and that thing is just, when all else fails, you put that on. It's like, oh yeah, right. This is just that sound. It's perfect. I love the Hudson Broadcast is a big
Oh
thing
yes.
that I've used a lot, but not as much with Strat. And like I'm a big single coil pickup guy, and I love Strats. I love that guitar with like humbuckers for some reason. Or sorry, I love that pedal with humbuckers. It's pretty magical. Um, there's so many others, and I feel bad because I'm gonna forget some. The Jan Ray is great by Bemaram. Which I know is doing like the Timmy thing, and that's a whole other discussion in itself. But the Lightspeed is great by Greer. The Daedalus, which is actually discontinued by my friend Zach at Mythos Pedals. Um, Daedalus was like a blues breaker that I really liked, and we actually did a signature Ariel Posen one, like a limited run on one, and that is great. I use that, and I know there's a bunch of other ones I'm forgetting.
What
There's too
I
much. There's
you
too
mean
much.
you can't name every drive pedal on the market? Come on, get it
Yeah.
together. That's just ridiculous. No, you named a couple of my favorites in there too. I love the Broadcast. I really love the Lightspeed. Um, I think those are great. And I mean, I haven't played all of the ones you mentioned, but if you like a few of the ones that I like, I feel like we'll be on the same page.
Yeah. Oh
I'd
yeah,
like
man. What it comes
yeah.
down to for me is it needs to be an overdrive that is super dynamic. I don't like overdrives that are too loud. Like when you're only at 9 o'clock or something, which would be maybe three on the dial, and it's almost like unusably loud.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that. I like overdrives where you can have everything at 12 o'clock, and it's just obviously it's going to be a touch more than Unity, but it feels right and it's very close and it's very natural and musical sounding. And when you turn your volume down on the guitar, it can clean up really nicely and be very dynamic. That's what I like, and that's fuzz pedals is a big part of what I like too, and that's a whole other discussion. But the same thing with fuzz pedals, they clean up even more so than overdrive pedals. Yeah, it's all good stuff. It's all really good stuff.
Well, fuzz is a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
Before we start talking about fuzz, which is my my number one effect love in life.
All right.
Um, I got another question that since we're talking about effects from the Facebook group, Christian Williams, he wants to know your thoughts on compressors,
Okay.
specifically where in your chain you use them, and like how you kind of play around with those.
Yeah. I've had an interesting time with compressors in the last few years. I've never used compressors up until 3 or 4 years ago. I just never thought about it. I'd try it once. I had a Keeley 4 knob, like I still have it. Uh, and maybe I just never knew how to use it properly, but whenever I'd kick it on, it just sounded like I should be playing chicken picking stuff, which is not what I do. And I could just never get on with it really. Um, but first of all, when I record and when anyone records in the studio, whether it's guitars, whether you play drums, you sing, everything gets compressed, and it's a sound that we all um, experience in our lives, whether we realize it or not. But for guitar, I got my hands on a Cali 76 by Origin Effects, which is marvelous, absolutely marvelous. I got it and I ran it at the beginning of my chain. And this was just on a tinier pedal board. I was running it at 9 volts. You can run it at 18 volts as well. And something about it, I left it on all the time. When I had to play a gig that I had to be really quiet on, it made everything feel good. When I wanted to be really loud, it made everything feel great and not so pokey, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And then I updated my board and I went, full G2 switcher, bunch of things. And it was recommended to me that I should consider putting the compressor after my overdrives. So I go fuzzes, overdrives, and then the compressor. And instead of running it at 9 volts, I was also highly recommended that I should be running it at 18 volts. And once I did that, first of all, there was just so much more headroom on the compressor. It started compressing everything even more than I was used to. It started doing a different function. In fact, it started doing, I think what it's supposed to do is really suck out your dynamics a lot more. So it's still awesome. Don't get me wrong. I don't use it live as much anymore because I want all my dynamics to come from me on the guitar. I don't want a pedal taking any of that away live. Now in the studio, it can be useful very much so in the studio. Just, maybe it's a slide track or a solo or some kind of part can just really benefit from having that extra bloom from it. But for live now, I don't use it nearly as much as I was when I had it at 9 volts at the beginning of my chain. And maybe I'll eventually switch back to it because it did feel really great. It was just interesting. I'll give some other honorable mentions. I love the Cali 76. I use that religiously whenever I use compressors. I use a little bit of compressor pedal on my record, and for that I actually used the Fat General by Thorpe Effects. I don't know if you're hip to him.
Oh yes, for sure.
Yeah. So that compressor is amazing. It's just, apples and oranges with the Cali. It's just a different vibe, but it's really great too. Those would be my 2 favorite compressor pedals, hands down. But that's my experience with them, to be honest.
That's your experience with compressors.
Yeah.
I kind of I can relate, and I didn't really get into compressors until the last couple of years. And this is the reason, because I usually am playing with so much fuzz that I got plenty of compression from those.
Yeah.
And I didn't really feel the need to get more. But I do understand what you're saying, with certain times it just feels better to have that extra little squish that
Exactly.
bring up. I kind of think of it as bringing up some soft parts for me. I know it does. That's not exactly what it's doing. It's making everything more uniform, but I kind of think of it. It's like I'm when I'm attempting to do chicken picking stuff, I almost always will have a compressor on of some
Yeah.
other.
You almost have to. It's that. Compressors are an effect to me. Like it's not. How do I say this? I think of a compressor like kicking on a Leslie pedal or a chorus pedal. Like it does a certain thing. When I need a specific sound or a certain function, I kick the compressor on now, rather than like an overdrive pedal just needs to be left on all the time.
Right.
That's
Right.
kind of
That
how
makes
I
a
think
lot of
of it.
sense.
Yeah.
Yep. I gotcha. That makes a ton of sense. A ton of sense.
Mm.
All right, I'm gonna sweep through these Facebook group questions, and we can go back into general conversation after that. So one of the ones, and this actually might make a lot of sense because I know you got a new record and you're going to be touring.
Indeed.
So that's super exciting and rad. But what Rick Calhoun asks, what is it like performing in different countries? Are there big difference between the U.S., Canada, and the U.K.? And also,
Um,
he's a huge fan, by the way. He
ah,
says.
thanks, Rick. Yes. Well, each country is a little different, but each town and city in each country is also very different. So, in my experiences, when you tour in Canada and you play, and this is kind of in the States too, if you're playing in LA or New York or Nashville or Chicago or Toronto, Vancouver, there's a kind of a big city reaction or reception that you get where the crowd is almost more in it with you. And I know most people would think it'd be the opposite, like they'd care less maybe, but in my experiences, it's not true. They're a lot more receptive and they're a lot more vocal and appreciative in some ways. Whereas you get to go to smaller cities uh, and towns, and they're a bit more reserved, and they love it just as much, and they'll come up and uh, see you after and say hi, but their ways of showing it is a bit different. They're a bit more subdued and reserved. And the UK, um, and honestly, anywhere I've played in Europe and the UK, they're very receptive. People are very nice. They just love guitar. They love bands. They love songs. They love it all, and they really want to let you know that they appreciate it and that they appreciate you coming there. It's great. I love going there. Every place is great to tour. That's a very sitting on the fence answer, but
It's very diplomatic of you.
yeah, I
Everybody,
can't say there's a
you're
better
all
place than others, but they're all great.
just different.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That makes a ton of sense. Let's go. Oh boy. So wow, we got some more questions coming in. Wow,
Hit me with
easy,
them, man. It's good. We
easy,
got
guys, settle
yeah.
down. Um, this is kind of a strangely phrased question, and I don't know that it applies to everything. But Nick View, he asks. I probably said his name wrong. I always say his name wrong. Sorry, Nick. I know. You know I love you. He has a couple questions, but one of the ones that I think that I'd like you to clarify. He asks, "Why a baritone? You don't just play baritone, though, do you?"
I don't just play baritone. So when I play an open C, that's the intervals are 1-3-5, 3-5-1, just like open E but in C, and it's basically one semitone sharp of baritone tuning. So baritone tuning, it's not an open tuning; it's standard. It's like having a 7-string guitar but with no E string on top. So it's
Mm-hmm.
B E A D F sharp B.
Yes.
And basically what happened was um, I never owned like a proper baritone because like with the longer scale length, I don't love it because it just sounds like a bass to me, and I've never
Okay.
dug that for some reason. Like if I want that kind of sound, like I'll just buy a bass. This is just how I've been. So I like keeping everything standard scale length, and like the open C stuff is really low tuned, but it still sounds like guitar. And on my record, I took this Tesco Delray that I have that I bought for $50 in Goshen, Indiana on tour once. And I put on the heavy strings and I tuned it to baritone standard. And it's the guitar that I play on a song called Get You Back that's on my record. And I was like, okay, this is speaking to me because it still just sounds like guitar. Doesn't sound like a bass like what I was describing, but it's really low and got a lot of vibe. And the opportunity came to collaborate with my friend Matt from Mule Resophonic Guitars.
Yeah.
And
Man.
I've always asked him, or I had always asked him for a few months, just like, I know you do the tellies, and they're super cool, but you should make me a Strat. And he was like, I just don't have they're steel, and I don't have uh, like the cutouts, the template for a Strat thing, and kept pushing it off. And then I guess after bugging him enough times, he was just like, "Dude, we're doing it. I figured it out. Let's do this." And once we got going with the Strat idea, I was thinking about that guitar because that Tiesco Del Rey is wicked. It's one gold foil pickup, super microphonic. It's got a lot of character, but you almost can't play it live because it feeds back all the time.
Right.
So I told him, you know what? Let's set this guitar up with 17 to 64 strings and baritone tuning. So that standard B tuning. And I've just spent the last 3 months with it. So people that follow me will see that I've been playing it a lot lately. And I've just been spending a lot of time taking a lot of the things I play already in standard tuning and transposing it for baritone tuning. And I've just been really enjoying it. I just love the low. I love the lowness of it. I love the characteristic of it. The pickups in that guitar are really dynamic. And I've just kind of fallen in love with it. That's really the only reason. It's just something new and something different. I just wanted to do something that not a lot of other people are doing. And the standard scale baritone Strat is something I've just really been digging and will continue to do. Yeah.
Yeah. I like it. That sounds like all the reason a guy would need. And
Yeah.
Matt's guitars are so cool. He's came on here before, and he's probably overdue to come on again. But
I'm actually going to go see him tomorrow. So
oh, you are?
I'll tell him you said hi.
Yes, please do. Please
All
tell
right.
him I said hi. That's so cool. All right, we got one more Facebook group question, and I'm still working. If this sounds a little bit scattered and all over the place, I'm still working on integrating these Facebook group questions. It's kind of a new thing that I started doing.
Oh man, it's great.
Usually it was just me rambling the whole time, and so now I'm trying to figure out how to kind of integrate these in a smoother fashion. But last one I'm going to do, and this is being suggested that this become a new standard question, so maybe it will be. It's pretty good. Jason Fuzzmonger wants to know what your favorite Boss pedal is.
Ooh. Well, my first ever pedal that I ever bought was the Boss Distortion. Is it the DS1, the orange guy?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
the
it's the
Nirvana
DS1.
pedal.
Yeah, and that was my first pedal. You know, Boss holds a special place in my heart, and I have a good relationship with those guys. I love all the stuff that they're doing. But what my favorite Boss pedal these days would be, I think it would be a tie between the new Dimension C pedal they just did, and I had the fortune of doing like the unveiling video with them. That pedal is wicked, and their multi-effect pedals, like that, their version of the Strymon Timeline Mobius type of pedals.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Those
The
are
RV500,
yes,
and all the DD500 and all that stuff.
yeah, those hold the tie for me. Those and the Dimension C are my favorite Boss pedals for sure.
That Dimension C has been getting mentioned to me a lot. I need to try that thing. I really
Yeah,
do.
it's pretty rad. It's pretty rad. All I can say is, if you like chorus,
I do.
and I'm not even the biggest chorus guy, but sometimes it just has that right thing, you know. It's a really good one. I'd say the Dimension C and the Julia by Walrus are my two favorite chorus pedals, like actual just straight up chorus.
Those are really great pedals, and one thing I find with chorus is I find that people who say they don't like chorus have not really explored that effect that much.
Totally.
I used to think that I didn't like chorus either, but then I found a few and that I really liked. One of them kind of surprised me. It's the old DoD. I forget which number it is, but it's the old DoD stereo chorus. I think it's the FX65. That thing sounds phenomenal, and they're cheap, and they look cool because old DoD pedals look cool, even if they're a little sketchy. But that one is cool.
Yeah. The thing about people, I mean, just like how they buy a slide and they don't get one that fits, and they're like, I guess I suck at this. People buy a chorus pedal expecting that they just are going to do Andy Summers sounds, and most of the Andy Summers sounds that they know and love are actually a flanger, hilariously enough.
Right, exactly.
But they think they're going to get a different sound, and they just think of it as like this novelty or a one-trick pony. But there's so many more functions that a chorus pedal does. Like if you're running stereo amps and you split that chorus pedal, it does this phase thing to your sound that just, I don't even know how to put it into words, but it makes it magical. And I think, like who was it? I think Joe Bonamassa, even, who's like notoriously not an effects guy. I think he runs a stereo chorus pedal of some kind at all times. It's like very low depth on the chorus side, but it does something when you're running a bunch of amps that just blooms your sound up a bit. I wish I could explain it better than I am, but it's just, yeah. If you're listening, go and try it. Let us know.
Go try it. Tell me what you think. I know that if you have, this might sound kind of weird to phrase it like this, but sometimes when you're running multiple amps, you can run into phasing issues here and there.
Yes.
And I have found that a stereo chorus actually is a kind of a cheat code for that.
Totally.
Where it's like, oh, I think I'm out of phase. Let me just adjust this a little bit, and now I'm not anymore.
Yeah, maybe that's actually the trick I was hearing. I think it was just fixing out of phase. I'm so used to the G2 now, which is, it has a phase switch basically. And if you're out of phase, you just hit this one thing and you're good to go, which is great. It's nice and easy. But I think that's the chorus pedal function for sure.
Yeah.
They're just great. They're underrated.
Yeah. And it definitely fattens up the sound too. I'm not saying that's all it does, but I've found that's like, it's kind of like a cheat code if you don't have a phase, the ability to switch phase on the fly like you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
The chorus pedal will kind of alleviate that to some degree. But then if you hate chorus, then you're stuck with the chorus pedal. But you should try it anyway because we said so.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So let's get into fuzz. What do you like in a fuzz? What kind of fuzz is your go-to? All that stuff. Let's talk about the square waves.
All right. Well, I'll typically always have two fuzzes on my board. One is an octave fuzz, like kind of an Octavian type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my first legit one years ago was the full tone Octafuzz. I think it was just called the Octafuzz.
Yeah.
The big blue one. I wish I never sold it because that specific one I had didn't sound like any other ones. Like everyone else's sounded the same. Mine had this mojo to it. And 10 years ago, I was pretty careless. I would buy gear weekly. I'd sell it, get something else the next week. Next week, sell it again. Like I was just ripping through things. I didn't really know what I wanted. I didn't really know what I needed. I was still young. And that was one pedal that got lost in the fray, for sure. But I love having an Octavian. My faves are the Tycho Habre Octavian, like Chicago Iron thing.
Is that how you say that?
Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know how to say that. I thought maybe I was just getting educated because I've always
said it, and maybe I'm wrong too. But I'm just gonna stick to it.
I like it. That's fine. If I'm down with, I was like, I don't know. There's certain terms that I've only seen written, and I don't know how you actually say it. That's one of them.
I kind of like the idea of never really knowing how to properly say it for some reason. But
don't correct.
What's that?
Don't correct us if you know how to say it out there. We like the mystery.
Yeah, we like the mystery. We don't need the correct answer. I basically have two boards. I have a big board and I have a smaller board, and both of them have an Octavia type fuzz, and both have another fuzz, which I'll get to. But my two favorites, and what I currently have on both boards, a lot of people know that I use the Beatronics Octahive, which is a very, very great octave fuzz pedal. It's very dynamic. It cleans up great. I love that. And on the bigger board, I have the Jesse Davy. I always call his pedals the Jesse Davy, but it's King Tone. His Octavian, it's really great as well. and I can't believe I. Oh yeah, the Octaland. That's what it's called. Those are two of my favorite octave fuzz pedals right now. Very great.
And those
And
are
it just
both on that board?
no.
That
One's on the Beatronics is on my smaller board, and the Octaland is on my bigger board.
Okay, gotcha. I'm
Yeah,
following
sorry,
you now.
sorry. I just meant on typically on any board, I'll always have one Octavian style pedal and one other fuzz.
Okay.
So I love that sound. It's just it doesn't even really get used that much, but it's just something I feel like I always need to have just in case.
For certain tracks,
I'm not
sometimes.
necessarily trying to do like the Hendrix thing ever, um, but it's just a sound I love to have, and you never know when you'll use it. But what I use the most is the other fuzz, and that's typically a silicon fuzz, like a fuzz face type of thing. I have a bunch of fuzz pedals, germanium as well, and I like the consistency of silicon fuzz because, like, if you're playing a festival on a hot summer day with the germanium fuzz, like it won't act the same. Like it'll actually start farting out on you,
Yes.
and you need to literally cool it in a fridge or something like that. I don't have the patience for anything like that. In a contained environment, they're freaking amazing. But something about the silicon fuzz pedals that I've tried and my favorites, which I'll get to in a sec, they're consistent. They're not temperamental. You can play them anywhere, inside or outside, and they sound the same. They just breathe fire, which is what I love. They have a bit more top end while retaining all the low end. I find sometimes Germanian style pedals just get a little too low endy for me, and I'm not as crazy about that. When the rest of my sound is already dark, it's almost too much. And they're very dynamic. The silicon fuzz pedals that I use are super dynamic. So if that's the only pedal I have on, and I turn down to 5 or 6, it's fully clean. It's just
Interesting.
cleaner than an overdrive pedal. So on my smaller board, I have, again, it's also the Jesse Davy silicon fuzz. And I've done sessions where I have no other pedal on except that one, and I'm at like 7 or 8 on the guitar, and it just sounds like a wicked overdrive and works great for a solo. And then if I crank it up even just to a 9, it's obliterating your face. And then if I turn it down to a 5, it's like a crystal clear, clean tone. It's really versatile, which I like.
That's extremely cool.
Yeah. And on the big board, I'm currently using the Vemaram Oz, which is the Oz Noise signature pedal fuzz. And it's also a silicon, same exact thing as the Jesse Davy one, just really dynamic, really big, fat, chewy sounding. It's just fantastic. I love it.
Very cool.
Those are the ones.
Very, very cool. I like the way you kind of approach it. I stack fuzz. I do all kinds of idiotic things with fuzz all the time. But I do like that you try to get one that can cover basically the whole spectrum of what you need, and just with the volume knob, I've found that like a lot of fuzz pedals struggle to be super dynamic. A lot of them are just walls of death, which I love.
Yeah.
But it seems like that would be difficult to integrate into something like what you do.
Exactly. I can't do the wall of death type one. It's actually just too much for me. I can't. And there's been a lot, and I still have a lot of them. Certain fuzz pedals like that where, for my sound and my style of playing, it's just kind of unusable. It just doesn't work for me. I'm not saying that they're bad. There's no right or wrong, but there is right or wrong for when you know what you need for your own sound and your playing. And those just don't really suit me as much as the ones that I had mentioned that are really, really dynamic and just contained a bit more. But it's like having a dog on a leash, and then the other one, the wall of death ones, are like walking down a busy street without and not having your dog on a leash and you just chasing after it in traffic. You're like, no, you know, it's madness.
Yeah. I I like
Kind
that
of weird.
analogy. Like there's a time and a place to get wild, but it's not walking down the busy street. It's anyway.
Exactly.
But I wanted to talk about your new record here just a little bit more in depth, and kind of
Yes.
the process you went through in creating it, and what you want people to take out of it, and all that groovy stuff. Like just tell us about the new record. Just talk about it in a general term.
Well, it's my first solo record ever. It's really been 2 years of working on material and just deciding to do it. But really, it's been my entire life kind of leading up to it. It's something I've always wanted to do and pursue, but I've never really forced it or, it's always been at the back of my mind. And it just naturally, it started happening and naturally just started taking over. And it's great. I'm really enjoying it. The record is a song's first record. It is definitely not a guitar record, although there was probably the most time was spent on the guitar tones and sounds and parts. And there's a lot of guitar moments. Every song has a lot of moments, but it's about the song. It's not a guitar record per se. Yeah, I had a really fun and challenging time. Like when it's your own record, things that would be a normal and easy decision. I produce records for people, and I just as a side man, I do a lot of sessions for other people. And someone brings a song, and it's like, oh, cool, yeah, I'm gonna lay down a trem part here, and then a fuzz for the solo. Like I don't even. It's really easy to know what it needs. But when it was my own songs and my own record, I was really leaning on Murray, my producer, to be like, I have no idea what to do. What should we do here? It was kind of crazy. But yeah, it's a tip of the hat to all the people that follow me and who are fans. I think if they haven't heard it, I think they'll like it. It's got everything that like I'm known for doing, but hopefully songs that mean something to people and they can walk away from feeling some feelings, but also being musically very satisfied and tonally satisfied. Yes.
That's very nice. I'm excited to give it a listen. I've not got to check it out yet, but it's on my playlist for my drive I gotta have later. So I'm
Nice.
very excited to check it out. And I'm assuming that people can find that on Spotify and all the other places. Is that correct?
Yes, available everywhere. If they really want to support, they can go to my website arielposen.com, go to my online store and buy a physical, or come out to a show on tour and buy one in person, or go to my Bandcamp. Bandcamp is pretty good. You actually will make money off of Bandcamp more so than iTunes and whatnot. But it's all good as long as people are listening to it. That's what's most importantly.
Of course, of
Yeah.
course. Well, we're getting I'm really excited to check this out. I think this is going to be really interesting because what I've listened to some of your work with the brothers, as people are aware of. So I'm excited to check out your solo stuff and see what that's all about. Very
Right on.
excited about it.
Thanks, man.
Um, what if anything have you taken away from, like, what advice would you give to somebody who's like struggling, who wants to do what you did, who wants to kind of create their first record? So I know, having been through that process myself, it's kind of daunting. Do you have any advice for somebody that wants to but maybe hasn't, is a little nervous about it, or hasn't had
Yeah.
the push, or whatever?
Yeah, I have serious advice. It's a few things. First of all, no one is going to do it for you, and no one is going to hold your hand along the way. It's all up to you to make, and anything in the music industry as a musician or any other aspect of this industry, you got to hustle and make it all happen for yourself. You got to make the things happen. You got to just dive in and commit to it and make it happen. You got to make the phone calls. You got to do all that stuff. That's a big part of it. And that's just in regards to the artistic side and like the songs and the music, it's easy to sound like other people, but it's hard to find your own voice and stick to your own sound to that is as honest as can be and like truly what you're hearing in your head rather than just trying to come up with something. If you're writing an album thinking that you're going to tap into some market to make some money, chances are it's not going to do great because it's not going to be fully sincere, and people can smell dishonest and phony, and they really, people are interested in honesty and sincerity in music, and whether it's good or bad, if you mean it, people give it attention, you know? So just, I'd say, you just got to make it happen. You got to hustle. It's all up to you. And just be honest and hone in on what you really want to be doing, because that's what people will want to be hearing the most out of you.
I like that. I think we've been force fed a lot of dishonest music, for lack of a better term. Especially, I don't know, I feel like especially in modern times. And I think that you're right. People are hungry to hear an honest take on something that's genuine and kind of from the heart. And so
Yeah,
I feel like that was really good advice.
cool.
Now we got, after getting all a little bit mushy and serious there for a minute, I got another question, and this
Hit me.
one's it's a little bit hard for a lot of people to answer. So, but it is kind of a career maker or breaker. So I hope you're sitting down and comfortable.
I am.
What kind of pizza do you like?
Well, this is an interesting one for me because I'm a carnivore. I do love my meat. I truly do.
Mm-hmm.
And I love pizza. But for some reason, okay, like I love fruit. I eat fruit. And maybe I'm just a picky eater, but I love most fruit. But if you put them all together and call it fruit salad in a bowl, I'm kind of disgusted by it for some reason. I really don't like that.
I'm with you.
And with pizza, and like I love seeds and nuts, but if you put them in a salad, I'm just like, what? What are you doing? And for some reason, with pizza, it's not that drastic. Um, but I don't love meat on pizza for some reason.
Interesting.
Yeah, like a meat lover's pizza, it's just not my thing. The flavors, I don't know. Something just, I don't like it as much. You know, I love, some chicken on pizza or like a fancy kind of prosciutto or something. If you go to like a kind of a hippie, nice pizza place is great. But when you start getting all the crazy things on, and I worked in a pizza joint too in high school, so maybe that could be a reason for it because I spent 8 hours a day putting gross refrigerated meat toppings on pizzas that maybe it just turned me off. In fact, I'm just realizing now maybe that's exactly why. The pepperoni just seemed so gross. The Italian sausage was just like, what the hell is this? Like, I can't believe, you know what I mean? So to answer your question, my favorite type of pizza is the Old Faithful cheese.
Ah,
But I will eat like a veggie pizza. I will do like, yeah, maybe just pineapple, maybe just onion and green pepper.
Oh no, not the pineapple. You said that we got to end this podcast. I have
All
to
right. Well,
cut that out.
it's been nice knowing you, man.
No, no. That's interesting, and I will say that I have been, I mean, I am a little bit opposite of you. I really like meats on my pizza, but I have gained a huge respect for a quality cheese slice.
Yes.
In the last couple of years, it's like if you can't do that right, if you can't do a cheese slice that tastes good, then you need to reevaluate your pizza.
Agreed.
Like that needs to be good, and if it's not, then we've got a problem.
There's a bit of an art to it too, because the amount of cheese you're putting on is the deal breaker. That's what decides the quality of the cheese slice, right? Because you don't want to have too much sauce, but you don't want to have too little sauce. You don't want too much cheese, and you don't want like sometimes you get pieces that are dripping with cheese, and while that might seem like that's great, when it's all falling off and not staying together, that's not great. But when there's not enough, and like a margarita pizza is, I forget the kind of cheese it is, but it's not mozzarella. It's more blotchy and it's more tomato sauce based slices, and it's great.
Mm-hmm.
But when you just get a nice ratio of everything and it stays on together nice, and I like it with maybe I love cheese. Like, I just love it. Could eat it all day if my body would let me. But yeah, simple and nice. It's good.
I like it. I'm fully on board with that. Well, kind of the last thing I flip flop my usual order of things, but since it's too late for that, last thing would be if you could put up a billboard and put anything you want on it, what would you put on it? Because now's your time to make that statement.
I could just put anything on a billboard.
Anything, and like show everybody.
I would just say
it's a little bit heavy sometimes, but I feel like it's a valid question.
Oh, jeez. Don't want it to be pretentious. It'd be cool for if it was something funny. Like, I don't want to sound like a motivational speaker or, trying to teach anyone anything. But I think on a billboard, just it'd be something to do with just be you, like find your own voice or whatever it is in any kind of. It doesn't have to just be music. Just like stay true to whatever it is you do.
I like that.
That's kind of
good.
Cheesy, but that's all I can think of.
Well, cheesy fits in with the topic that we were just discussing prior.
So right?
That works out just fine.
Clearly something is on my mind now.
I know what you're eating later.
Yeah. Or maybe
all right,
now.
Well, I feel like... Oh.
No, I'm not.
Well, yeah,
but maybe I should be, is what I'm saying.
You can. I don't see any reason why not. All right. Well, I think that's a good spot to wrap this up on. Thanks so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
It's my absolute pleasure, man. Let's do it again. Thank you.
Yes, we shall. We shall. All right, everyone. For Ariel, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones. Man, that was a lot of fun. Really, really enjoyed that chat. I am going to definitely take him up on that come back on offer. So I hope you guys liked that as much as I did. If you need a little more, there is always Patreon. And Ariel and I did hop over to Patreon and do a little more podcasting over there. So if you want to hear more of this conversation, including a very unfortunate experience he almost had on tour, you can slide over to patreon.com/tonemob, and you can listen to the rest of the conversation right over there for as little as $5 a month. And with that $5, you will get extra Tone Mob content every week. So yes, it is quite a fun thing over there. And if you need more nerding out, don't forget to check out the Facebook group. Haven't talked about that in a little while. We're all still in there hanging out, being geeks and having a good time. So if you just search on Facebook, the Tone Mob, you'll find the Tone Mob Facebook group and join that. Make sure you answer the questions. We don't actually let anybody in who doesn't answer the questions because that helps us filter out bots very effectively. And so make sure you do answer those questions. You don't have to answer them seriously, but just answer them in a way that we know that you're not a robot. So anyway, thank you very much for listening. If you could share this with one person, that would be amazing. Just share it around. That's what keeps this whole show going, is just amplifying the signal. All right, I think that's a wrap. I will talk to you next week. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and By you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.